Guys, what's up? It's Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews here. I'm here with I guess, review. This is a very non-formal, non-scripted review. I'm not sitting down. I'm not wearing my hat. And when I say this is formal, I mean unformal. I mean I am literally sitting here in my Anthropophagus shirt and my boxers right now because I'm about to go to bed. But I just got out of a screening of this new Halloween movie. Now, this is going to be very different from my usual kind of reviewing. Essentially, I'm just going to tell you the things I liked, things I didn't like, without any spoilers, give a rating, and then I will get into some spoilers. So, overall, I honestly kind of liked this movie. It's not a perfect movie. It's not the best Halloween sequel, as people seem to be saying, nor is it the worst Halloween sequel. It's definitely better than, like, parts 4 through Resurrection, but that being said, it's not the best Halloween movie like some are saying, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this. I think it's a fitting end to the series, and I think that if this is going to be the official canon ending to the series, I think it's a decent enough ending to go with, and yeah. I thought there were some pretty good performances here. Jamie Lee Curtis, as a lot of people know, made a return to the film, and I expected her to be in it for, like, not that much. Like, I expected it to be, like, a bait-and-switch kind of thing, and her maybe be in it for, like, 10 minutes at the most, but she was actually one of the main characters, which I found very, very cool, because it's cool to see her in this movie. She was good in it. She did a good performance, did a good job with what she was hired to do. That being said, not all the performances were good, not all the characters were good. Some people have complained, I've heard, about Laurie's character being like a little too over the top and ridiculous for the Halloween universe, and I guess you could argue that, and I guess I can see that, but it doesn't bother me as much, but I'll get into that a little more when I get to spoilers. Basically, what we have with this new Halloween is a final film in the series that completely gets rid of the canon of the series that was that happened after. It pretty much makes everything after Part 1 uncanon, and those aren't the true sequels. So this is the true sequel, and I don't have a problem with that necessarily because a lot of the sequels aren't too good. But I do have a problem with it when they don't call it, like, Halloween something, or, you know, or just give it a title, like why didn't they just title it, I don't know, Michael? Like, why didn't they just title it, like, Michael Myers, like they did with that recent Leatherface prequel movie? Not that I've seen it, and not that I've heard it's pretty bad, but still, you know, they could have named it Michael Myers, they could have named it Michael, they could have named it The Shape, you know, they could have done these things instead of going with, oh, let's just call it Halloween, and use the name, and it just kind of feels very disingenuous and dishonest and kind of shitty when you really look at it, because you're like, the only reason they're calling it just straight up Halloween is so people may or may not confuse it with the original and go see it, or maybe because they just want to make bank off the original. Either way, the movie's pretty gory. The gore effects are cool and well done. As far as I could tell, they were all practical, which is great. On the gore meter, I would probably have to give this movie, like, a solid 5. It's got some pretty gruesome scenes, but I would never say that this is, like, the most explicit slasher film ever made. That being said, as far as final ratings go, I would probably have to give this new Halloween, like, anywhere between a 6.5 and a light 7, maybe 7.5 out of 10. You know, it depends on you know, how I feel about it when I rewatch it, but it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of the Halloween series. If you want the series to have a decent canon ending, rather than what we've gotten with, you know, H2O and Resurrection, and this is coming from somebody who likes H2O. Then go see this. It'll be worth your time. If you're a fan of Halloween, I would say give it a shot. Now, that being said, we can get to spoiler talk. God fucking damn. Okay. Hey guys, what's up? It's 12 hour later, Biscuit Blue Horror Reviews, here to bring up a few things in the spoiler discussion section of the video that I had forgotten to mention and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna dive right into the stuff I left out. There are a bunch of needless jump scares in the film, which, considering this was produced by Blumhouse, that's not surprising at all. And I know the original had a few jump scares, but they don't even use the classic jump scare cues and music cues from the original Halloween. They use the overused, you know, Insidious, The Conjuring, Annabelle kind of jump scares that aren't even like sounds you would hear in the real world. There is a new character that is introduced as Michael's doctor, and there's literally a point in the movie where Laurie meets this character, and she literally calls him the new Loomis, and that's basically what I've kind of been calling him ever since, because he's basically just a replacement for the Donald Pleasance character. And then we've got a moment in the film that is really, really stupid. So there's a moment where they hit Michael Myers with a car, and Laurie's granddaughter's in the back seat. There's a cop in the front, and it's the cop who stopped Loomis from killing Michael in the original. And he gets out after hitting Michael, and he goes to kill him, and the doctor's like, look, you can't, he's property of the state, he's my patient, I can't let you kill him. And then he essentially just kills the cop and takes off Michael's mask and wears it himself after knocking out Michael and putting him in the back seat. And he claims that he is very happy that this happened because he's always wanted to see Michael out in the wild in his quote-unquote natural habitat. And he's always wanted him to speak, and he thinks getting him to confront Laurie would make him speak. This backfires when the Michael wakes up and then pretty much throws the doctor on the ground and crushes his head in a very, very cool scene. That's probably the best kill in the movie. And this, again, happens out of nowhere. It doesn't make much sense, and it's actually kind of fucking stupid. The movie as a whole feels like basically just a big mishmash of the best elements from the original as well as the sequels, which is both a good and bad thing, because there's nothing necessarily new here. If you are going to see this because you're like, well, I didn't think, you know, the originals, other than the first one, had much to offer. This is basically just pretty much a collection of story beats from almost all the sequels. There's a moment where the granddaughter character, Allison, her boyfriend cheats on her at like the Halloween dance, and he throws her phone into the punch bowl, which then, you know, makes her phone broken so people can't get a hold of her. And then that plot element is like never mentioned or referenced again. You never see the boyfriend character again. Literally, that only happens to make it to where this character is helpless without a cell phone. There is a scene where a drunk teenager, after getting rejected by the character Allison, the granddaughter character, sees Michael and thinks that he is a neighbor, one of his neighbors or something, and he ends up, you know, like, man, have you ever wanted to be with a girl, but she just keeps running away from you? And everybody in the theater laughed. I'll admit I chuckled a bit, but again, it's out of place for a Halloween movie. And he basically just complains about being in the friend zone, and then he gets horribly murdered. I think that that's about everything that I missed. I don't know if I said this or not, so I'm just gonna bring it up real quick. This is definitely one of the better Halloween sequels, but it's nowhere near as good as Halloween 2 or Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch, honestly, being my favorite of the series. So, yeah, that's actually about it. So now I will let my 12 hours previous self continue spoiling the shit out of this movie. And keep in mind, just because I'm complaining and spoiling the shit out of it and saying a bunch of, and pointing out all the stupid shit, Doesn't mean I don't like this movie. It was enjoyable. I had fun with it. It will make my best of the year list, but I need to let people know that there's some stupid shit going on in this movie. Anyway, back to you, bud. I was trying to do a cool transition, and now I just want to fucking kill myself. Now, there are a few problems I had with this movie, and I'm going to start with some of the more nitpicky personal problems I had. Now, one of the first things that happens in this movie is these two journalists who are doing a podcast are trying to get an interview with Michael, and they kind of do, and they show him the mask, and while he's like out in the courtyard with all these other mental patients, and suddenly alarms start going off, and the other mental patients start like acting up as soon as the guy pulls out the mask. And the guy who pulls out the mask even says like, oh, it said something along the lines of, you know, I had to really, you know, I had to, you know, talk to my friend to get my hands on this thing, which would insinuate that this is the original mask he has. Now, they show it to him, and it's a, you know, decent opening scene. It's kind of, it didn't come off creepy as much as it came off as, like, laughable. I was more, you know, just kind of chuckling to myself lightly and very quietly as this was happening. And then suddenly, in the middle of him asking, like, Michael, speak to me, the screen cuts to the title screen, and the Halloween theme starts playing. Now, that was actually fucking hilarious in my opinion. Like, it wasn't a surprising jump scare. It was funny because it felt very out of place for a Halloween movie. I don't know if I'm deaf and I'm forgetting, or if they actually did this, but I think that they did a new theme, a new version of the famous Halloween score, of the famous Halloween theme, for this movie, which plays over the credits. And that version of it, if it isn't a new version and I'm just being an idiot, then I retract this statement. But this new version absolutely fucking sucks ass. It does not give off this kind of fear and tension and nervousness that the original theme gives off. If anything, it felt like a kind of upbeat synth pop track with some light, like, horror undertones. Now, back to these reporters. So these reporters, they end up, you know, meeting with Lori, they interview her, and she tells them to get the fuck out. And then they eventually end up at a gas station after Michael escapes, and he happens to be at that gas station. He kills the attendants there, kills both the reporters, and then looks in their trunk and finds the mask, which again, it is heavily implied that this is the same exact mask. Now, look, it's a slasher film. I'm not going to sit here and, like, be super nitpicky about it and say that this is a legit problem I have. I just want to point a couple things out that I didn't really like about this movie. And it's the fact that, what are the chances of these two random-ass reporters and podcasters getting a hold of the original mask, and what are the chances of Michael running into them at the gas station and retrieving said mask? It makes no sense, like, at all. It's very coincidental. It seems like and then once they're killed and the mask is stolen, these characters who you think towards the beginning are going to be like two of the main characters are dead, and it's just like, so you're telling me these characters were only introduced to us so this movie would have a vehicle to get the mask back to Michael. He couldn't just, like, find another Halloween mask. I mean, considering he stole the original mask from a store in the original movie, maybe they still make those masks. It's Halloween after all. Something else I had a bit of a gripe with is some of the comedy in the movie. Like, they forced in some raunchy humor. There's a scene where a woman is babysitting this kid, and she's talking to her boyfriend on the phone, or her friend on the phone. She's like, yeah, he's about to come over with some of that good Alakazam. And then the kid's like, I hear you talking to your boyfriend on the phone about smoking weed, you know? And then they get into an argument, and they're like, fuck you, and this goes on for quite a bit, and everybody in the theater was yucking it up and loving this. But again, this feels very out of place for a Halloween movie. And to top it off, my problem with this is the same problem I have with, you know, with Richie in the 2017 It movie, which is that, like, sure, there are some funny moments in there that are intentional, but a good amount of the funny moments just kind of come off as cringy and annoying and feel very out of place in a scene that could have been used for something else entirely. There are a few references in this movie to the other Halloween movies, specifically the famous, you know, where he stabs the guy and he sticks to the wall. That kill is referenced. The famous Bob the Ghost kill is referenced. And there, you even see trick-or-treaters out in the 3 famous Silver Shamrock Halloween masks, which I actually thought that was a very, very cool reference. And I really dig that they put that in there. Another problem I have is that Laurie, as a character, just kind of is an absolute nervous wreck, and you know she's not crazy because you've seen the first movie. At least I would assume most people would see the first movie before seeing this new one. Like, you know she's not crazy, you know she's not stupid. She is preparing for something that might happen. There's not a huge chance that it will happen, but she's preparing for something that might happen. But the fact that she somehow built a secret trapdoor basement under a sliding countertop island in her kitchen in the middle of the woods is a little bit much, okay? That's a little too over the top. Also, there's a scene where she's trying to shoot at Michael and she's missing, but earlier in the movie you see her at a firing range and she's hitting the targets perfectly. There's the final scene in the movie where Laurie says, you know, Happy Halloween, Michael, when she attacks him with the knife, and it's kind of a cheesy moment, but it's enjoyable. As somebody who is a fan of the Halloween movies, it's an enjoyable and somewhat satisfying scene, and the ending, I actually think, is pretty satisfying, other than one thing. So, I mentioned before that there's that basement in Laurie's house, and it turns out that basement wasn't actually, and when you see it, Laurie's daughter, who has a daughter of her own, Laurie's daughter, you know, tells her own daughter, like, this is my cage, and you think, oh, this is where she was mentally scarred for because her mother made her train for the night when Michael would eventually come. You know, you know, it's like, oh, it's all connected, but then they actually, like, you know, managed to fight Michael, like all 3 of them, the granddaughter, Laurie's daughter, and Laurie herself. They all 3 fight off Michael at the same time, throw him down the stairs into that basement, and then they flick a switch, and suddenly, like, literally samurai swords come out of the sides of the trapdoor hole, and create, like, bars of a cage. And then the mother character says, see, this wasn't a cage, it was a trap. And I guess that they had planned this all along to get him to the house and lock him in the basement and then set the house on fire, because there's even a automatic setup that Laurie set up in the house to where it would turn on heating irons and then spray, like, gas on them to then set the house on fire. Again, it's a like a good ending. I like that, you know, they actually, like, trap him in a house and set it on fire, but it's a little far-fetched and cheesy for a movie that's trying to advertise itself as the true sequel to Halloween, and trying to avoid the later schlocky, awful sequels, while also going and doing something that is exactly like something one of the later sequels might do. Yeah, I don't know what else I have to say. The father character, you know, Laurie's daughter, her husband, and the father of the granddaughter character, Allison, is very out of place in the movie. Like, one of his first lines is, no joke, "Oh crap, I got peanut butter on my penis." It's such, I mentioned before with the out of place humor, but that was just like such an unneeded, stupid line. His character is useless and pretty much only exists so he can get killed by Michael. And you could say that that's the case for all the characters in the original, and it definitely is. But I don't know, like that character could have just been completely removed, and they could have said like her father died in a car accident or something. What else do I gotta say? Teenagers in this movie are stupid and even worse than the teenagers in the original. Also, I highly doubt that there are teenagers today who are babysitting and actually saying like, hey, you should come over, because look, I'm not a professional teenager expert or anything, but that seems a tad bit far-fetched, honestly. You know, I don't think many millennials would be just like, yeah, you should come over while I'm babysitting this kid. Oh, God. I don't know what else to say. I know there's more stupid shit that I'm probably forgetting, but I also just want to mention something else about my experience with this movie, and that is, like I mentioned earlier, you know, you probably should see the original before seeing this. Well, actually, no, I just remembered something stupid. There's a scene where they are describing the first murder Michael committed as a child, where he stabs his sister to death. And they mention that he cuts her spinal cord, and, you know, as she's, like, trying to crawl away, he's stabbing her in the sternum. And and as they're doing this, instead of, like, shooting new footage and actually recreating it to match the description, they just use the footage from the original of that murder scene. And it doesn't match the description they're giving, like, at all, and it's kind of absolutely awful. Did I forget to mention that Danny McBride produced and helped write this movie? That might explain some of that. I know Danny McBride is apparently a big horror fan, and I know that he was in Alien Covenant, so I will, like, you know, give the man some props as a horror fan. I will be like, yeah, you know, it's cool, dude. But that seems like something he would write, not necessarily the scene of the description and the footage not matching, but the stuff with the basement and stuff like that. That feels like something that Danny McBride would write if he was asked to write a horror movie script. I think that is about it now. Yeah, but no, as I was saying, you know, you would assume most people would see the original before seeing this one, but that doesn't seem to be the case with the people I was in the theater with, because a good amount of them were on their phones, on Facebook, and it wasn't like they were, like, all the way down in the bottom rows and I could barely see them, but they were sitting right, like, diagonally to the left and down in the row right in front of me. I could see their phones clear as day, and it's very distracting when you're in a dark theater where the only things that are lit up are the screen and the exit sign. And that's just annoying as hell. There were also some really fucking stupid, annoying teenagers in the back who were like, don't go in there, don't go in there! And they were screaming and talking over the movie the whole time, and, you know, I remember when I saw Don't Breathe in theaters, and I counted that as, like, my worst experience seeing a movie in a theater, but this might actually top that, because at least when I was, like, seeing that movie, I was annoyed, but I was just kind of, like, biting my lip and, you know, twiddling my thumbs, kind of annoyed. When I saw Halloween Tonight, it literally got to the point of me being so annoyed that every time the movie got quiet and these people started talking, you know, there was one scene where somebody in the audience said, is she seriously that stupid? And I just said, like, you know, as loud as possible without saying it in a loud way or screaming it or yelling it. I just said, are you seriously not going to shut the fuck up? Like, I kept saying and pretty much repeating what people were saying, back to them, you know, I was breaking apart fucking toothpicks I had in my pocket and trying to throw them at the people who were on their fucking phones in front of me, because it was very distracting. And, you know, I get it if you go see, like, a cheesy slasher film, you know, and you want to laugh at it and poke fun at it, that's fine. But don't go to a mainstream horror movie, even if you intend to laugh at it and have a good time, and talk over it. Because there are people in there, even me, who I wasn't expecting to want to review it, or talk about this movie, or even really see it, who actually, after watching a little bit of it, were somewhat invested in it. But that's it. That's it. Like I said, there's probably more stupid shit in this movie that I'm forgetting, but that is really it for now. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, guys, this is Biscuit Boo Horror Reviews, signing off. Peace.